opportunity to hear from real subject matter experts and, again, energy pioneers. So I'm pleased to introduce this next speaker. We really wanted to carve out some time for him. He's a gentleman that I've gotten to meet early on when I accepted the job of Secretary here in Oklahoma. He and I have had the opportunity to spend time together and have now become friends. And one of the recent times that I spent time with him, or actually early times, was we had lunch, and he started expressing some opinions about why we were failing on messaging around the younger generation, why traditional fossil energy and some of the things that we've been talking about for decades right here at the Southern States Energy Board weren't reaching the younger generations, and that we're actually in danger of losing those generations because we can't reach them in the ways that they need to be reached with the messages that they need to hear. And Robert is a really unique individual. He's Robert Hefner the fifth. I argued with Vicki, my deputy, that he was the fourth. And if you know me, you know that I hate being wrong, particularly to Vicki. So that was a great moment for me. But Robert did indeed let me know that he was the fifth. So, but Robert, his family is well known, long-time traditional fossil energy family leaders, civic leaders here in Oklahoma. I have recreated on Lake Hefner. But Robert's a great friend, and I think you'll enjoy his presentation today.
All right, that's am I on? Oh, there we go. All right, I'm on. Hi everyone, Robert Hefner, the fifth. And I wanted to take a quick moment to say, I might be biased about this, but I think we truly have the most incredible Secretary of Energy and the Environment in the whole country, Ken Wagner. We are so lucky to have him. And his ability to go around this country and represent Oklahoma so well. Not only is his stature pretty solid, but he's got the best haircut I've ever seen. But more than anything, I'm very thankful to call him a friend, and I'm thankful to him for having me here today, as well as the Southern States Energy Board and Vicki and all the support that goes into that. So today we're briefly going to talk about Hefner Energy. I'll get the little spiel there. The millennial condition. This is an old, oh no. We got the wrong one. Either way, we'll walk through it. About Hefner Energy. Hefner Energy promotes the responsible, sustainable development of our global energy resources to lift nearly 1 billion people out of poverty. And so when you look at the United Nations and their sustainability goals, what most people are shocked to learn is that climate change ranks 13th among their millions of stakeholders that vote on these things. Out of 19 total in the categories. What ranks first is literally poverty. And so there is a paradox, as Dr. Scott Tinker teaches us. Energy does not end poverty, but you cannot end poverty without energy. So when you look at the Maslow hierarchy of needs, first and foremost, there's 1 billion people living at the low rung of that. I think perspective is sorely needed in the United States, as well as the West, around us. These are people that literally have no clue how they're going to shelter their families, much less feed them. You have another 3 billion people that live on that second rung. These are people that are still cooking with dung, animal crap, as well as wood in their homes. Indoor air pollution alone in India is horrible. 2/3 of those people are still cooking with those fuels. 1 million people die every year in India alone due to indoor air pollution. Meanwhile, we have our American arrogance. I renamed that to Western arrogance earlier. But we have our American arrogance. We're sitting here talking about our abundance of energy, how we're going to move and decarbonize into electrical grids and otherwise. We don't do ourselves any services around the world for our image when we're sitting here bickering about wind versus solar and fossil fuels versus renewables, when these people are out there worried about how they're just going to eat. I'll digress here though and move into understanding this mysterious creature known as millennial. And the reality is there's a marked movement towards socialism among millennials and now the Zoomer population. YouGov did their poll, and separately Financial Times did their poll. 4 million people sampled in that representative sample set, so very statistically significant across the United States. And what you see there is that millennials have become increasingly dissatisfied with democracy. And I think you could even switch that word democracy out and substitute with capitalism. Why? Why is this occurring? Well, we're the unluckiest generation in the history of the United States. All these numbers I'm about to give to you are inflation adjusted. Millennials earn 20% less than baby boomers, despite being better educated. Our education costs are 213% higher than they were in 1980. Health insurance costs 900% more, even though we're the healthiest generation. Vehicle insurance costs are 50% more. Maintenance costs are 27% more, and that's just in the last decade alone. Home values have increased by 73% since 1960, and that's not accounted for in the consumer price index. Childcare costs are 18% more, up from 18% of actual all income versus 2% of income in 1960. CEO compensation has grown 940% since 1978, while wages have only grown 12%. The average millennial only has $8,000 to their name. 25% are forced to live with their parents. They don't want to. They're having fewer children because they don't feel like they can afford their children a good enough quality of life. They're delaying getting married. Ironically, once they do get married, they're staying married. And finally, about 30% of all dollars in circulation today were printed since 2020. Inflation is killing them. What that looks like is growth in economic output adjusted for population. We don't really have it as millennials. All right. On the right side of the screen, you'll see that millennials also do not have a percentage of household wealth by comparison to the previous generation. So capitalism has so far failed an entire generation, and the American dream is literally at risk if those in power do not pay attention. It gets worse. The inflation profiteers are out there. What I mean by that is inflation is killing us, right? We really don't have any money. We don't have any property. We don't have these things that inflate. And who likes inflation? Business owners. Why? They can give all their employees a raise. But it's not really a raise, is it? You're just going up with inflation, so the real wage is not really moving. You think you're getting more money, but you're really not. Your purchasing power is going down. The IRS loves that too, because they have flat lines as far as what they're going to tax you. So if you go above that income threshold, they get to tax you. The U.S. Treasury loves it as well. Why? Because we've printed a lot of debt in the last few years. I don't know if you've noticed. How does the federal government pay that off? They inflate it away. Real estate developers love it, obviously. All the real estate appreciates. And mortgage debtors, same deal. Meanwhile, the gap between productivity and wages is alarming. Since 1974, wages have stagnated, even though productivity has gone up. Millennials now only own 7% of America's wealth by comparison to the baby boomers of the same age, who owns 20% at the time. Again, inflation adjusted. That wealth is going somewhere. So naturally, this has caused some friction between the baby boomers and millennials. It's also created a distrust for capitalism. And we're actually seeing that play out in how millennials view fuels. For coal, 59% of the younger generation believes that's the fuel of their grandparents' generation. 56% of them believe oil and gas is the fuel of their parents' generation. And finally, 71% of us believe that renewables are the fuel of our generation. It's become possessive, and I find that very interesting, and it's not getting any better. Millennials, 18% of them view traditional fuels favorably. Zoomers, way worse. So what do they care about? They care about green. They love green everything. And it's permeated our entire society, particularly Western society. Just the other day, I pulled out my milk carton, and the Rising team has gotten into the game. They're going carbon positive by 2025. I'm pretty sure that marketing person got fired because Greta. was pretty upset. So what do? They organize and complain about fossil fuels from their petroleum-based products while wearing their petroleum-based yoga pants. I like those. Being warriors against CO2 while literally injecting it directly into their own bodies. But it's not their fault, and let me explain. I lifted this from Bill Gates in his new book, How to Avoid a Climate Disaster, he lifted it from someone else. But as the story goes, there's an old fish, and this old fish swims by, comes across these two younger fish, and says, "Hey boys, good morning. How's the water?" Before swimming up. Finally, one of the young fish says to the other one, "The hell is water?" And so what I hope immediately jumps out from that story is sometimes things are so prevalent around us that we have no idea they exist, nor the vitality that they provide for life. And the thing is, we are not rational. We are quite irrational. And this is hard for me to say. I love math. I scored perfect on the ACT in math. 18 in English. But it took until last year I read two books, Thinking Fast and Slow, 2011, Kaufman, a psychologist. And then it was later reinforced by Chris Voss and Never Split the Difference. And Chris Voss was the lead hostage negotiator for the FBI worldwide. And what these two books solidified for me was that system one is quick, deliberative thinking. It's very reactionary, animalistic. That's 98% of our thinking. The other system two is the deliberate side. Only 2% of our thinking is this way. That's the rational side of us. So system two is slave to system one. We are irrational, as much as I don't want to admit that. And you're never going to, convince someone of something with statistics. So facts don't matter. That's a weird thing to say to this room, a room full of STEM professionals. And so I try to use this as the lesson of the Titanic. If you're at the top, it might be hard for you to read, so I'll read it. If you're on the top of the Titanic out of the water, you might be saying, it's dry up here. Climate change is a hoax. If you're above the water, sitting there, somebody's trying to force you to put on a life vest, you might be saying, you can't make me wear that. If you're in the water, start feeling the water there, you might be saying, oh shit, give me that life jacket. And finally, if you're in the water, you might be saying it's wet. Climate change sunk the Titanic. So the reason debate exists is because there's facts on both sides. Facts are not going to convince anyone of anything. So what is? This is what not to do, and I've listed these examples from companies across our industry. I didn't put names on them to not embarrass them, but here we go. Pipelines are the safest mode of energy and transportation. This is messaging that they have spent millions upon millions of dollars for. All the other side has to do is put up a picture. The ocean is on fire in the Gulf of Mexico due to the pipeline blowout of Hefner, right? Safety is our number one priority, they say. Well, all you have to do is show a video of the BP oil blowout. 99.99% of oil moves safely through our pipelines. All they have to do is show a picture of a single pipeline explosion and the devastation it caused. We care about species and habitat conservation. All they have to do is show a picture of how you do it. We are putting a target on our own backs. Exxon knew with their lawsuits and everything going on, we have won all our court cases. This vindicates us. Well, all they have to do is put up a video of your lobbyists saying otherwise. And again, the reason facts don't matter is because the two largest environmental firms that exist in I think, the world are the Environmental Defense Fund and the NRDC. Their annual budget combined, just the two of them, is $380 billion. Okay? That equals over 20 years of Exxon's funding for climate denial. So they sit there and point, right, at the horrible lobbyists for Exxon, but they're employing an army by comparison. Facts don't matter, emotions do. One more example of that. None of the 100 locations on the U.S. coast with recorded data periods of more than 50 years show any appreciation in sea level rise. There's a picture of the Statue of Liberty today, and back in 1920. I don't discern any particular existential threats, do you? We need to create fear, though. That's what Al Gore said in 2008, and he has. The National Geographic, something that's supposed to be scientific, incorrectly and alarmingly using these fear-based emotions, show that the Statue of Liberty up to, I guess, we're midway there, when that is not at all a possible reality. Fear is powerful. What is climate change? Climate's warming quickly. Humans are the worst. It's an existential threat. You'd be surprised how many people can't actually define what this really is. And so I had to go look it all up, and on the right there, that's supposed to be AOC, the end is near. Fear is a powerful motivator. Emotions are how people make decisions, not with rational thinking. And the social dilemma, as it was viewed on Netflix, really drove this home. Technology giants, including the media, are incentivized to harvest your clicks and use your cognitive biases against you. Literally, two people sitting next to each other, based upon their profile online. A Google search would autofill climate change is. Depending on who you are, it's going to say it's the greatest threat to the world, it's an existential threat. The person sitting right over here is going to say it's a hoax and it's not real. This exacerbates the issue. And so we need to figure out how to live it. This is my proposal to the room. The left cares about clean water, clean air, and pollution. All right, the impoverished. These are the people that care about cheap access to electricity. They're tired of figuring out how to feed their families. They're tired of walking 18 miles a day, either way, just to fetch clean water. And on the other side, you have, I'm going to call them the right. These are the people that care about reliability and all of the above approach. They include fossil fuels, they include renewables, they include nuclear and hydrogen. But why can't these overlap? They absolutely can, and they absolutely do. You can care about cheap, clean, reliable energy. This is the radical middle. This is where we need to live. Yeah. So I brought the wrong presentation with me, but I will quickly summarize real quick. Millennials are not at all lazy. They are hardworking. Millennials are not at all boring. They're incredibly innovative. I don't think there's any doubt in my mind why EQT is among the best operators in the United States. It's because that entire company is run by millennials. If you want to engage your company, take that next step, you need to be asking yourself why you don't have more millennials in your executive C-suites. Lastly, millennials are not at all socialists. They are just skeptical of capitalism because it's not worked out for them yet. In fact, renewables are the ones that are socialists. They only work part-time and expect the government to subsidize them. Anyway, that will conclude my remarks for the day. I don't know if there's any time for questions. Thank you.